We have been continuing in the series of the 10 Commandments, and today we tackle the commandment that relates to theft, and it is the Eighth Commandment. It's the Eighth Commandment. I have removed my mask because I was asked to do so. I pray that the rest of you will keep your masks on. If you can, if you do not have a mask, the deacons can give you a mask. It's just for purposes of me speaking here that I'm not wearing a mask, but as soon as I'm done, you will see me put on mine as well. Let us go to Exodus and chapter 20. Exodus and chapter 20, where the commandments are listed. And you can go to verse 15. Verse 15, Exodus chapter 20, verse 15. Says, who can read it? Joseph, you found it? You shall not steal. You shall not steal. So we are talking about Exodus 20, 15 as our reference, and it simply says, you shall not steal. Okay? You shall not steal. Again, friends, this command is one of those commands that we call the horizontal ones, right? Now, when I say vertical and horizontal, it is one of those commands that deal with our relationship with one another. You remember there were those first ones that dealt with our relationship with God and how God related to us. This yet is another one that is horizontal. It works on how we relate to one another. Remember, one of the first things we said earlier on, even as the commands were being introduced, we said, if you recall, that Jesus Christ would then in Matthew summarize the commandments and say that what are the greatest commandments? One, he summarized them in two. One, you guys don't know. Which is the first one? The one that where he summarized the vertical ones. He said, you shall love the with all your some people don't know. You shall love the Lord your God with all your heart, with all your mind, with all your soul, with all your strength. And then the horizontal one he summarized. He said, you shall as yourself. You shall love your neighbor as yourself. That is how he would summarize then the second one and the second set where this one falls. So as you continue to remember those, then even if we are digging into verse 15, it will make sense because you're trying to love your neighbor as yourself. And that law, the Eighth Commandment, is still in effect today. It has not been erased from the Bible. It is still there. We are not supposed to steal because if we steal, we do not show love to our neighbor. Because we can only steal from our neighbors, isn't it? We can only steal from others. Is it possible that you can steal from yourself? It is not possible to steal from yourself. You can only steal from someone else. And when you steal from someone else, surely that is not the way to show that you love them. Anytime you steal from someone else, you show lack of love to that person or to those people if they are a group of people, or to that institution if you're stealing from an institution. You're showing that you do not love that person. And there are many ways we can break this law, not just by stealing something that is tangible, like like a marker pen, or a bag, or a car, or this camera. There are many ways. Stealing actually begins, like all other sins, in a heart, in a mind. That is where it begins. Out of the heart comes evil thoughts. You remember? That is what the Bible says, that out of the heart comes evil thoughts. Adultery, murder, sexual immorality, theft. Let us just turn to Matthew 15 and see that, so that we lay a good basis for what we are talking about. Matthew. Let us go to Matthew 15 and verse 19. Actually, and even 20. Can someone read loudly and clearly?
Matthew 15, 19 and 20.
Yes.
For out of the heart come evil thoughts, murder, adultery, sexual immorality, theft, false witness, slander. These are what defile a person, but to eat with unwashed hands does not defile anyone.
Yes. So you can see that theft that we are dealing with is numbered amongst the evil things that begin in the heart. It comes from inside. Coveting normally will precede stealing because it starts from the inside. Because it must first begin in the heart. What does James say? And we have read James chapter 1 verse 14 since we started, isn't it? We've gone there several times. What does James 1:14 says? What does it say? We've been reading James chapter 1 and verse 14.
But each person is tempted when he is lured and enticed by his own desire.
And then 15.
Then desire, when it has conceived, gives birth to sin. And when it is fully grown, brings forth death.
Yes. Matthew 15:19. This is Jesus speaking, and this is James speaking. Okay? And James is basically echoing what the Lord Jesus Christ has said, isn't it? He's saying that each person is tempted when he is lured and enticed by his own desire, his own wicked desire. The desire, when it is conceived, gives birth to sin. And sin, when it is fully grown, gives birth to death. It leads now to death. So temptation brought on by this coveting can then give birth to the sin of stealing. And like all sins, stealing leads to death. Stealing also leads to death. Now, it is easy to blame our tendency for stealing on lust, isn't it? Or on poverty. And then we say, it's just because I'm poor, that is why I had to steal, Or we can even blame it on people putting their things carelessly, isn't it? The other day, I was in the evening on Friday, I passed by a shop to buy some pizza, and there was this guy who had put money on his pocket. And someone was saying, hiyo pesa yako itaenda na upepo. Itaenda na upepo. So me, I thought he was saying that a wind will blow it away. So the guy I was with said, no, he's basically saying that someone will steal it. Because I was telling that guy, which upepo? There's no upepo inside this room. And said, no, it's someone who will steal it. Right? So people blame everything that they can want to blame for the sin that they commit. But what is interesting are those excuses that we give to ourselves and others when we steal. And unless, as a Christian, you and I decide that we are going to keep our consciences very, very alert, we could ourselves fall into this sin. I have realized as I've gone through these commandments, not just the eighth one, but as I've studied the commandments, I've realized that the Christian has a duty to guard his mind and to guard what we allow our thoughts to go into. Yes, those evil thoughts will come into our mind, but our minds must be razor sharp, that we detect them immediately and say to ourselves, are these the kind of things that I want to think about? Is this noble? Is this glorious? Is it a faithful thought? Is it a thought that is God-honoring? So that as those thoughts come into our minds, the best way to deal with them is then to take them out and do what Paul says. Whatever is noble, whatever is honoring, whatever is God-honoring, think about such things. So it starts in the mind. You've heard people saying that there is no longer any honesty. That there is no longer any honesty. And people make that justification even when it comes to the sin of stealing. Oh, you are the one who is struggling to be honest. Everyone else does what? Steals. You've heard that. Everyone else is doing it. It is like we are now even justifying sin using what you call mob psychology. We say it is okay. Everyone else what? Does it. So what is it that we ourselves shouldn't do it? Now, those are not the standards of God. The standards of God are not what people do. The standards of God are His word. And His word is clear. You shall not steal. You shall not steal. And sometimes we apply double standards of judgment when we consider those who are rich and those who are poor, small businesses and big businesses. A child may begin their life of crime, their life of theft, from just people justifying little things. Your child goes to the neighbor's child and steals a toy, or comes back with a toy. We don't want to say that he stole it. And you're not bothered to ask, where did you get it from, baby? Oh, where did you get it from, my child? They may tell you, I took it from Junior's house. Did Junior give it to you? No, I just took it. Then what does the parent say? Anyway, he has many toys. You just play with it. When you're tired playing with it, you can return it. We're justifying theft and how it begins. We must remember that for the child, the toy is everything, just as for me, an adult, a house may be everything. For the child, the little toy may be everything, just like for you, an adult, car may be everything, or money may be everything. So we end up encouraging theft. As we look at stealing, let us also remember that we can distinguish from personal property and public property. In our minds, there are people who think that stealing is only bad when I steal pastor's pen, but it is not bad when I steal from the government. Have you heard people saying the government is very big? You cannot steal it and finish it. You have not heard that. Me, I have heard. Serikali ni kubwa. Huwezi iba umalize. It is as if to say it is okay to steal from the government because it is too big. There will be always something to to steal. Or to say, oh, sasa sisi ndio tusiibe na wakubwa wanaiba. You've heard that. People justifying theft. The only problem as we do those things and those justifications is that we forget that we are Christians. We forget our standards are different from the standards of everyone steals from the government. Our standards are different. And like I said, another double standard is to make distinction between small and big theft. It was just little. It was just little. Some parents, so that the children gain advantage, cause them to steal by even, by lying, say, about their age. Say there's going to be a recruitment into the disciplined forces. You tell your child that they are only recruiting people who are 20. And you are 25. So what you do, go and cheat that you are 20. In fact, go and say you are 19. What do? They even go to the extent of making new identity cards so that the child now says they are 19. The truth of the matter is that at that point in time, you are helping your child to steal an opportunity from the government. An opportunity that should be going to a 19-year-old, you're stealing it. The only problem is that sometimes that kind of theft is very hard to undo. Because once the ID is out that your child is now a 19, for the rest of that child's life, they will be cheating about their age. You put them in a situation where they will cheat forever because you wanted them to gain something by stealing. One can hardly expect a child to develop honor for their parents who help their children to steal. And you see why James says that when you break any one of these commandments, you break all of them. There is no way you can steal without lying. Is there any way you can steal without lying? Theft itself is a lie. It is a lie. So the Eighth Commandment is put for us to help us to focus how we view our neighbors, how we view our government, how we view the institutions that relate with us. It is not just taking what does not belong to us. It is more than that. It is our heart. It is our heart. Our coveting, our wanting what is not ours. Of course, there are laws against all sorts of thefts. Larceny, which is a stealing of personal property, is called larceny. Stealing of personal property, like a pen or a bag or something like that. So there are all sorts of laws. Embezzlement, you've heard of embezzlement. Like embezzlement of funds. You've heard of fraud. Isn't it? You've heard of what else? You've heard of robbery. Have you heard of robbery? You've heard of burglary? Pardon? Swindling. Any other types of theft that you've heard of? Pardon? Banditry, which is more like robbery. Like those guys who steal cows in Pokot. Uh-huh. Any other? Cyber theft. Corruption comes close to fraud, isn't it? Or bribery. Corruption is rather a big word. Corruption, I've realized, encapsulates a lot of things. So, yeah. And cyber theft, cyber crime. Carjacking is close to robbery. Forgery is fraud. We just talked about it. Changing of dates, birth dates. That's forgery. Pardon? Pyramid schemes. That one is very bad, eh? We'll just add it here. You guys know what pyramid schemes are? Gambling. Yes? Identity theft. Near cybercrime, isn't it? Identity theft. Someone said? Yes, hijackings. There are many. Smuggling, which is near, smuggling. Smuggling, wash. Yeah, wash ni karibu pyramid schemes, eh? Sidio, wash ni pyramid, eh? Money laundering, which is a big crime in Kenya now. To show you that money laundering is big, eh? Do you know the government had to even change currency because of money laundering? You realize we had to change the 1,000 shilling note. That was because of money laundering. That it takes the government to even change this, the look of money, so that people who are laundering money can at least give us a bit of a break. But now is when we are told that those guys who the government was targeting have now this new currency in containers, right? Receiving stolen property and keeping quiet about it, isn't it? You are not the one who goes to steal. John Roy steals and brings, I keep. Right? He steals and he brings. Then me, I just keep it. And I pretend that I didn't steal it. Shoplifting, is that theft? When you just take a candy, you're just walking in the supermarket, take a candy, put it in your armpit, and walk like this. That is your normal walking style, with a candy right in your armpit. By the time you're going to eat, the candy is melted because your armpit is warm. Those are all thefts. You can see from that introduction that, truly speaking, theft starts from inside the heart. It starts from inside the mind. It starts from coveting that which is not ours. And it offends God. Theft is so serious that Matthew lists it amongst the sins that cause death. All those who break this commandment, all those who break God's commandment in regarding theft will die eternal death. They will be taken to hell and they will be punished for it. The intent of God's commandment, as we now can see, goes much deeper. And I want us, as we move on, having seen the various types of the various names that are given, to find out just a few, about 10 or so, examples of stealing. Examples of stealing. And so, as we finish this introduction, unless someone has got a question, I want to look at some examples of how we steal. If you have a comment or a question, you can ask as we go through some examples of stealing. Yes, please.
And the tout asked me for...
Try to be louder.
Yeah, recently I boarded a matatu to Chemelil. And
Chemelil?
this tout asked for 100 shillings to Awasi.
Yes.
But when I gave him the cash, it was 1,000 shilling note, and he felt that was, now he could take 150. What kind of theft is that?
That is robbery.
I
know Deacon Emmanuel has had to struggle with something like that when he also found a tout who wanted to overcharge him. Isn't it, Deacon? Yeah, overcharge him. So that is just robbery. They are robbing you. That is robbery. Because I'm sure you asked for the money back and there was a bit of, I'm not giving it to you. Yeah. There was a bit of force. And that is just robbery. Okay. Number one, stealing from your employer. Can we look at that? Stealing from your employer. How can one steal from their employer? Those who have been employed. What is one of the ways you can steal from your employer? Yes, Elizabeth? What is time?
Maybe during working hours, you can take time off, maybe to just go and do your personal things.
You can steal time from your employer.
Then that would mean you are stealing time.
Time from work, eh? So instead of working, you don't work. Instead of working, you don't work for your employer. You use the time that you're supposed to be working for him to do something else other than what they are paying you to do. You're malingering. Okay? You know malingerers. We think that malingerers were only in primary school. No, they are malingerers even at work. You know, they get into the office, and the moment they get into the office, especially in modern offices that have got Wi-Fi, right? And the moment they get into the office, they get their gadgets or their mobile phones or their whatever connected to Wi-Fi. And instead of working, now that Facebook can be put on a laptop, you see them closely looking at the laptop, but they are actually Facebooking. That is stealing from the employer. Stealing from the... In that regard, that person is stealing time. Isn't it? They are stealing the time of the employer. The employer said you shall come and work from 8 to 1, take a lunch break, right? And then come back at 2 and work up till 5 or 5:30. But what do they do? During that time, they want to do something else which amounts to what Pastor calls malingering. They're just malingering around there, but they are not working. They are stealing from their employer. But this is it actually stealing from the employer? Do you know that that act is actually stealing from God? Do you know that? When you do that to your employer, you're actually stealing from God. Someone open up to Colossians chapter 3, verse 23 and 24. Colossians chapter 3, verse 23 and 24. Because that is where Paul discusses how we are supposed to consider work. Colossians chapter 3, verse 23, 24. And Pastor preached about it as we were doing the series on Colossians. Yes, Ezra?
Verses 23 and 24.
Yes.
Colossians chapter 3, verses 23 and 24.
Yes.
Whatever you do,
Yes.
work heartily,
Yes.
as for the Lord,
Yes.
and not for men,
Right.
knowing that from the Lord you will receive the inheritance as your reward.
Yes.
You are serving the Lord Christ.
Exactly. Whatever you do, if it is a job, do it heartily. You have just been given an opportunity that God has not granted to others. Do you realize that? You don't have a job, you come to church and you tell the pastor and the elders and the deacons and fellow members, pray for me, I need a job. Do we pray or we don't pray? Surely we bend our knees, sometimes without you even realizing it. In our respective houses, we are praying, Lord, please remember Deacon Amos doesn't have a job. Just give Deacon Amos a what? A job. He wants to take care of his family. He is overburdened by the bills that he cannot pay. Oh Lord, would you be kind and be gracious and remember our brother? And we plead with tears before God. And God, being a God of justice and a loving God, decides that he's going to answer those prayers. And he gives Deacon Amos a what? A job. Week 1, he's okay. Week 2, also okay. Week 3, now, he feels he's called Bwana Kubwa. He comes to work when he wants. He leaves when he wants. The same job that he asked God to give him, that we all prayed for him to get. Now, you can see that the way he's doing that job, he's not doing it like a person who now appreciates that God actually gave the job. He does it like he feels that actually he's the one who is owed. People owe him. His employer owes him to be there. Jude and I are employers in our own small capacity. And we have had to deal with staff who, when they are coming, the first time when they are applying for work, the things they tell you they are going to do, you'll be amazed. You even wonder where they have been, because what they are saying they are going to do is what you really need in your office. Then you give them the job. They are the people who come to the office with their mouths like this. You think you have forced them to come. They are never happy. And Jude never keeps quiet. He calls them and says, why are you looking so sad? Have we forced you to be here? Have we forced you to be here? You can't look sad like that and expect everyone else to be happy. Please be happy. Some of them eventually become happy. Others refuse to become happy. But the day they came for the interview, their smiles reached here. They were happy. Whatever you do, do it as though unto the Lord. In fact, the Bible says you are serving the Lord Christ. Don't steal from your employer. Since it is actually God we work for, we are stealing from God when we steal from our employers. And the same thing applies when you slack off from work before time, or taking small items out of the office. A pen here, you pick it. You go to your colleague's office, you find a Kamaka pen, you picked it. You see something that has to, there are some people when they come to clean your office, always invariably the blue biro is missing. And you wonder, is there someone targeting my blue biros? That is theft. And that is how it starts. Now, the problem is that there are some of those things that when you steal them, they are consumables. Isn't it? They are called consumables. You know what is consumables? What are consumables? In terms of items. Yeah? Things that when you use them, they finish. Isn't it? They get finished. Like this marker pen, you can only write with it for so long. After that, it gets finished. Assuming that after you have gone and used it halfway, you can't even see how much you've used. You are convicted that enyewe is stored. When you return it, how do you return it? Do you return with all the ink? See, some of the ink is even gone. If your conscience is alive, it will prick you. And you know you did a wrong thing. It doesn't matter what the value is of the thing you steal from your employer or from your colleagues at work. Galatians 5:21. Paul gives a warning to the church in Galatia. Galatians 5:21. You catch it, just read it. Galatians chapter 5, verse 21. Yes.
Asante. Envy, drunkenness, orgies, and things like this, I warn you, as I warned you before, that those who do such things will not inherit the kingdom of God.
They will not inherit the kingdom of God. Let me read for you Revelation 21, verse 8. The people who will not inherit the kingdom of God. But the cowardly, the unbelieving, the vile, the murderers, the sexually immoral, those who practice magic arts, the idolaters, and all liars, their place will be in the fiery lake of burning sulfur. This is a second death. I told you that there is no way you can steal without lying. Isn't it? Is there any way you can steal without lying? You lie even to yourself, isn't it? If you don't lie, if I found Daisy's bag or the little pen that is beautiful that she has and it has fallen down, and I pick it, I may not lie to her at that moment as I'm picking it. But when she rises up and says, I had a pen here, who may have seen it? When I keep quiet that I didn't see it, am I not lying? Am I not lying, brethren? I am. I lie. Am I not lying to myself that it is the right thing I've done? I do lie to myself. I had hoped she would not notice it. But now that she has noticed it, and it is right inside my pocket, how to remove it will cause me embarrassment. So the best thing to do is to lie and say, I haven't seen it. Our place, those of us who are thieves, is a lake of fire. But these employers can also steal from their employees. Is that true? Is it true that employers can also steal from their employees? How does that happen? Someone? From your employees. How do we steal from our employees? Yes, Adorin.
When you hire somebody who is overqualified for that position, say like that position required maybe a degree, then you employ a master holder or a PhD, then you pay as per the education standard. So you'll pay this person as a degree holder, kumbe he is a PhD or a master holder. So you are stealing from this person.
When you underpay, that is what you're saying. I think the simple word for it is underpay. Okay? You agree with someone that I'll pay you so much, right? Although strictly speaking, the degree holder, the PhD holder could have told you, all right, I know that I am overqualified, but because there is no work, I'm willing to accept this. That is not stealing, right? Because they are willing. to accept what you're offering. But when you underpay them, some of the people we really underpay are our house helps. Isn't it? Those are some of the people we really underpay. The ladies here who have house helps are having a problem with me this morning. I think you would do well to find out the minimum wages that you are supposed to pay your house helps. I will tell you from a legal point of view that we have had to do cases where people would do well to have just paid the right amount for their house helps. Because then when you don't, you end up paying with some penalties when they go to court. But other than that, other than the fact that you pay penalties, if you are a Christian, then the struggle is always to do that which is right, isn't it? And therefore, we need to ensure we don't steal from our employees. Yes, Kevin, you want to ask? Oh, I thought your hand was going up like someone was cheating you and they had employed you. Yes, Ezra?
Elder, what about in a situation where your employer fails to remit some of the statutory deductions from your pay in time? Then you fail to get services, for example, health insurance.
Right.
Then you are told at the hospital that your employer owes us.
Yes.
So if you want service, you pay cash. Another incident is where your employer fails to pay your loan deductions to the bank.
Right.
Then the
They
bank
deduct, but they don't.
they don't pay. Then the bank charges you interest, extra interest. When they eventually pay, it comes as late payment, but you will be charged extra interest on it.
I think in that manner also there is theft from the employee, isn't it? In that manner also there is theft from the employee. My pastor wanted to say something. I think in that regard there is also theft from the employee because now, and you can see the consequences. You're causing them to lose out on certain services, right? Yes, my pastor?
Yeah, I think another way in which employers steal from employees is when the employees work extra hours above the normal agreed working hours, and then they do not give overtime for the hours worked. Yeah.
True. When they work beyond the agreed hours. Overtime, it's called overtime? Yes. Again, if you don't pay, then we are stealing. Jude, we are supposed to pay some people for over. I'd forgotten. And that one, actually, you told me even the other week that I should pay. And I've forgotten. I'm going to do it this week. I tell you, we can also steal from our employees. Oh, this Christian life, it helps us to be right with God. God is wanting us to be right with Him. Proverbs 3:27-28. Who can read for us? Proverbs chapter 3, 27-28. Proverbs 3:27-28. Yes, Davis.
Do not withhold good from those whom it is due, when it is in your power to do it. Do not say to your neighbor, go and come again. Tomorrow I will give it, when you have it with you.
Exactly. That is another form of stealing from your employee. You know that it is end month. You have the money in the account. You are supposed to be paying the salaries, but you tell them to come tomorrow. You have it with you. The arrangement is to pay on 30th or on 1st. Tarehe 4 bado pesa haijatokea. Tarehe 6 pesa haijatokea. Tarehe 10, until now the employees start looking like they are starting to doubt you whether you are their employer or not. Or maybe roles are changing. And the Bible is saying, don't tell someone to come tomorrow when you have that thing which you are supposed to give it to them. Give it. Give it to them. The additional warning we see in Leviticus. By God, you shall not steal, nor deal falsely, or lie to one another. You shall not cheat your neighbor, or rob him. The wages of him who is hired shall not remain with you all night until morning. If you hire a workman to come and do for you work, you should pay him immediately. And Colossians 4, when we saw here, as Pastor was dealing with the issue of masters and slaves, isn't it? Do you remember? Call them bond servants. How did the God say you should give your servants what is just? What is just and fair, knowing that you also have a master in heaven. That is what we learned. That even as those of us who have someone working for us, even if it is in the house as a house help, you are there a master. Remember that you also have a master in heaven. And the Apostle James, in James chapter 5 and verse 2 to 5 says as follows, your riches are corrupted and your garments are moth-eaten. Your gold and silver are corroded and their corrosion will be a witness against you and will eat your flesh like fire. You have heaped up treasure in the last days. Indeed, the wages of the laborers who mowed your fields, which you kept back by fraud, cry out to God. And the cries of the reapers have reached the ears of the Lord of the Sabbath. You have lied on the earth in pleasure and luxury. You have fattened your hearts as in the days of slaughter. Employers keeping away that which is for the employees. They fatten themselves while their employees are suffering. That is theft from God. In Proverbs 21:6, that the getting of treasures by a lying tongue is a fleeting vapor and a snare unto death. People who therefore steal from their employees are actually stealing from God. Another example of theft occurs amongst lazy people. Anyone with a question here? Lazy people. We are just looking at examples so that we can know that this command is not restricted to a thief who comes in the night, right? Lazy people. 2 Thessalonians 3:10 to 12. 2 Thessalonians 3:10 to 12. Paul speaks to the Thessalonians about his conduct while he was amongst them. Says, or someone has it? Can read it loudly? No one has it, we don't have time. For even when we were with you, we commanded you this: if anyone will not work, neither shall he eat. For we hear that there are some who walk amongst you in a disorderly manner, not working at all, but are busybodies. Now, those who are such, we command and exhort through our Lord Jesus Christ, that they work in quietness and eat their own bread. Lazy people who don't want to work, right? But use their laziness to continue extorting money from those who are generous. Right? They extort money from those who are generous. They become perennial beggars. Now, begging is not a bad thing, but begging is a bad thing. You understand? Begging is not a bad thing, but begging is a bad thing. We should work hard. We should work heart. Paul says, even when we were amongst you, even when we had a right, we worked with our own hands to be examples to you that people need to work. Work so that you may eat your own bread in quietness without having to bother other people. Sometimes when you overbeg, you cause people to sin. Do you know that? You keep on asking, and then you cause people to have guilty consciences. And instead, you could actually work. But you're lazy. You're lazy. You wake up in the morning, and instead of finding something to do, you laze around until you feel hungry. Then you go to your neighbor and ask your neighbor for food. And when they don't give you food, you go around telling people that they are stingy. When my neighbor is stingy, I could actually smell the food cooking. He can't cheat that there is no food. I could smell it. They were cooking. But they refused to give me. No. You end up stealing from people. You're stealing their sweat. You're stealing their hard work. Yet you could also work hard. You could also work hard. That is also theft. Psalm 37:21. Someone read that one? Psalm 37:21. Jude, what is conversion? Conversion in theft. Explain it. Yes.
Somebody takes possession of somebody else's property,
Right.
and uses it for his own purpose. You have literally taken without permission.
Conversion, other than what Jude says, also involves me giving Pastor this pen and saying, I've given you that pen to work with, then you return it to me. Right? So initially he had permission to have my pen. Sindio? Then I tell him, ile kalamu yangu yenye ulichukua. What does he say? Oh, I misplaced it. He hasn't misplaced it. He's just realized that that pen writes very well. And the thought of not writing with it again. So he tells me, I think my son dropped it in the toilet. That is conversion. That is conversion. The wicked borrows, but does not pay back. But the righteous is generous and keeps on giving. The wicked borrows, but he does not bring back. That is also a form of theft. So that when we borrow money or any other item, ensure that you take it back to the owner. If you retain it when it is demanded, or beyond the time that you had agreed to retain it, you become a thief. Robbery. We talked about robbery. Robbery, whether with violence or not. Whether with violence or not. Psalm 62:10. Put no trust in extortion. Set no vain hopes on robbery. If riches increase, set not your heart on them. Do not steal. Do not steal. Even though as you're stealing, riches seem to increase, set not your heart on that. You are offending God. You are offending God. Accessories to crimes. Psalm 50:18 puts it very nicely. Can someone read Psalm 50:18? You know me, I've realized that the law that is practiced in the Commonwealth is just from the Bible. It's actually just from the Bible. And Psalm 50:18 puts it nicely. And someone also can open to Proverbs 29:29. Pastor, maybe if you can just read for us Psalm 50:18.
If you see a thief, you are pleased with him, and you keep company with adulterers.
Yes. That is an accessory to the crime. He sees a thief, and is the one who says, okay, what have you stolen? 50,000 shillings. Nipatie 10 tu na sitasema. Let us share. Then I will not say. What about Proverbs 29:24? Proverbs 29:24?
This is what it says.
Right?
The partner of a thief hates his own life.
Yes.
He hears the curse but discloses nothing.
Yes. He knows that a crime has been committed, but he decides that I will not speak up. That is sinning by omission, isn't it? Sinning by omission. Accessories to crimes. That is also theft. Accessories to crimes. What about land, stealing land? Job 20:19, for he has crushed and abandoned the poor. He has seized the house that he did not build. And Isaiah says, woe to those who join house to house, who add field to field, until there is no more room, and you are made to dwell alone in the midst of the land. You want every piece of land for yourself. You've heard of people in Kenya who own land the size of counties, land the size of districts, hundreds of acres, with dams inside, with swimming pools that would serve the public, adding house to house, land to land. They covet fields and seize them, and houses and take them away. They oppress a man and his house, a man and his inheritance. Deuteronomy says that when you change boundaries, you're stealing. The boundaries that your forefathers had put, you keep adding. That happens a lot in the countryside. It happens a lot in the countryside. Huko Ushago. You know, there's this guy who is next to your farm, and every time you come, you find that somehow his maize is inside your maize. And you don't know if his maize is yours or yours is his. And so you shift your fence, your boundary. Because at Shags, people don't even put much anything on a boundary. You know, you just know that somewhere here there's a boundary. What about bribery? Bribery is stealing. Job 15:34. For the company of godless men is barren. The fire consumes the tent of those who bribe. Last week we were doing adultery. You remember? We were told that the person whose wife has been stolen cannot accept a bribe. So then it means that there is also spouse stealing. There is also spouse stealing. So young ladies amongst us, when you get someone's husband, Who becomes, I'm told it is called sponsor. You're stealing another woman's husband. Young men amongst us, if you find someone's wife, she becomes what is called a sugar mommy, gives you money for sex, you're stealing another man's spouse. Men amongst us, if we get people's wives, people's daughters when we are already ourselves married, we are stealing other people's spouses. Yes, Dico.
I have a question.
Yes.
What of the case where you are targeting the same, let's say the same girl, then you go and say lies or reveal the truth about the other person so that the girl comes to you? Is that also considered theft of spouse?
You are targeting another girl.
Yeah. But then you know that... I know
She's married.
Not yet. I know John Roy also has been talking with her.
Yeah.
So I go and say lies or I reveal some truth about John Roy so that the girl doesn't go.
That John Roy you see is a witch. So that you get the girl. Obviously, you are stealing. You're using dishonesty to acquire the girl's favors, isn't it? You're stealing. You're stealing a match on the other guy. Sindio? Yeah. And that's why I was saying that stealing invariably involves lying. If there is one girl that both you and John Roy are trying to woo, just go and say your part. Let John Roy say his part. Let the girl choose. If the girl chooses you, fair enough, let John Roy peacefully walk away. But don't go there telling the girl that John Roy is a very bad fellow. That guy. So is your boyfriend, John Roy? Yeah. John Roy, the one who comes to our church. Yeah. Do you know him? Do you really know him? No, that one is stealing a match on this guy. That's not fair. That's not fair. Because then it involves lying. There's sin there. I think if the girl is a believer and you're a believer, and you go to her and you tell that girl that, well, I would like us to start courting, to be friends. I've seen you in church, and I think I would like to have us to be friends. And the girl tells you that, okay, I also like you, but you know, I have something going on with John Roy. You know, it may not be very stable, but it's already started. Then just tell that girl, oh, it's okay if you've got something going on with John Roy, that's cool. Me, I'm okay. You go on. If it doesn't work, you let me know. Isn't it? Yeah, so you wait on the sidelines as John Roy says his thing, isn't it? But don't be the one to spoil. Don't be the one to spoil. Unlawful businesses. For example, deciding that bangi, which is restricted by the government, is what you're going to grow and sell. Isn't it? That's theft. That's theft. You know that this is not wanted. Drugs. And you want to get. The other time in the eldership, we were dealing with one of our members who has had a problem with an illegal business. Illegal business. Was it gold? Explosives. Okay? That are used in the mining of gold in the DRC. In Acts, as I wind up, in Acts, chapter 19, 24, there was this man called Demetrius. You remember him? In the writings of the Apostle Paul. That silversmith who made silver shrines of Artemis, the goddess. And he brought no little business to the craftsmen. Isn't it? And they gathered together and they said, men, you know that from this business we are doing a lot, we are making a lot of wealth. Acts chapter 19, 24, 25, you will see that very amusing story. Say, this business is giving us money. Now here's a man who is coming here to say that we are worshiping false gods. This guy, we must chase him away. And of course, you know that was a cause of a riot in Athens. Stealing from the government. When we hide and not pay taxes, that is theft. We should pay our taxes. Romans 13:6-7 speaks to that. It speaks to that. You must pay taxes, for the authorities are ministers of God, attending to this very thing. Pay to all what is owed to them, taxes to whom tax are owed, revenue to whom revenue is owed, respect to whom respect is owed, honor to whom honor is owed. And Jesus himself in Mark 12:17 says, render to Caesar the things that are Caesar's, and to God the things that are God's. What about stealing from God? What about stealing from God?
I have a
The
question.
eternal God, the creator of the heavens and earth, yes?
My question is, how about lending your neighbor money and asking for that money back with an interest?
Aha, usury. It is called usury. How about lending a neighbor money and asking back the money with interest? Is that theft? Let me hear from you guys. Ama, you guys do not lend money to friends. Yeah? Is that theft?
Personally, I think it depends. If the money was, let's say, just there and you lend it and you want it back like that, then there's no problem. But let's say you have to remove the money somewhere where it was already earning interest for this person and you let them know, then they ought to give it back with interest. That's my opinion.
Yes? Any other person? Yes, Brother Jude?
My contribution is maybe I should read Deuteronomy 23:19.
Right.
So that those who answer it should have that in their mind.
Right.
You shall not charge interest on loans to your brother, interest on money, interest on food, interest on anything that is meant for interest. You may charge a foreigner interest, but you may not charge your brother interest. But the Lord your God may bless you in all that you undertake in the land that you are entering to possess, to take possession of.
The principle is there laid, isn't it? Amongst ourselves, we must not charge each other interest. We should give to one another to help. Right? We should love each other as we love ourselves. We should do unto each other as we would like to be done to us. One of the ways that Christians can be known as Christians is what? What does Jesus say? The only way people are going to know that you are my disciples is what? What? Love. You love one another. Loving one another means we sacrifice for one another. It is hard that we are going to sacrifice for one another by charging them unconscionable interest. It is very hard that we are going to do that. Secondly, in the life that we live, because we live under laws that have been made by the government, isn't it? We are under laws. Now, the law that has been created to regulate banking only allows banks and banking institutions to charge interest. Individuals are not allowed by law to charge interest or to start working to lend people money regularly and charge interest. That is not, it's called shylocking. It is illegal. So it is something that I would discourage us from doing. Shylocking is actually illegal. The law does not allow it. The law only gives banks the right to do that. And even that charging of interest is regulated by the central bank. They are told this is the base lending rate. You cannot, even if you cannot give interest lower than this, you cannot take interest higher than that, right? So those regulations somehow would throw you out. But when it comes to believers, and I like it that Jude, you read that, when it comes to believers, then it is better that we abide by the law. And it's also better that to show love to one another, we just help without having to ask for interest. It is not bad to lend money so that you're paid back, but it is, I don't think, quite a nice thing to lend with interest. Right? I have to stop there. When we come back next week, we will be doing robbery against God, stealing from God. Yes, John Roy?
Just one thing. I've noticed that most of the examples we've given in terms of stealing are taking a piece of something from someone. Would you consider selling one to slavery, stealing their whole life altogether? Selling people to slavery, is that stealing their whole lives altogether?
You're basically stealing their opportunities, their lives forever. Slavery was and is a sin. Slavery was and is a sin. And you can see the effects of slavery on Africa, for example, and the effect of slavery on America and the first world. I mean, those economies, as it were literally built on the backs of slaves. Now they can enjoy. Now they can enjoy. Yes, we could also have our own problems, but you can also say that they messed up our civilization. Whatever our civilization was, they interrupted it. And it probably has taken so many years to recapture. Yes, Liz?
I don't know where to draw this line between asking and begging, but what is your view on women asking their husbands for money every now and then?
What is your view on women asking their husbands for money? Pastor, help me there. Because it is my wife who has asked the question.
Let me get you off the nose.
Thank you.
I think we did consider the seventh commandment, and one of the things we understated there is the fact that the two shall become one flesh. Now, the becoming of one flesh means that you're going to share everything in common. Literally everything. The Bible doesn't draw a distinction between your money and the husband's money. And so I don't think you should beg for money from your husband. It is his responsibility to take care of your needs. So it's when the husband begs for money, when the wife begs for money, it means there's some problem in the financial aspect of that marriage. That should be worked on. Otherwise, your money is his money, and his money is your money. You've seen in Kenya, women say that my money is my money, and his money is our money. You had such principles. It doesn't work like that in the kingdom of God. You become one flesh in everything, financially, socially, economically, physically, in all aspects of life.
And then also note that there is a difference between begging and asking. All right? There is a difference, isn't it? Isn't there a difference between begging and asking? Begging has the connotation of the other person refusing, and you literally have to plead, right? My husband, please give me money. I'm not giving. Please, I'm not giving you money. Please, my husband, we don't have food. I will not give you money. I don't have, but you have. Please. Now that I think is begging. But if Carol went to Mr. Judragot, who we know is her husband, and told Mr. Judragot, Jude, we don't have food in the house today. Would you have some money so that we can go and buy? Oh yeah, sure. Are we going to the supermarket or we are going to buy fish? No, it was for fish. Okay, yes. Then tomorrow, yesterday you gave me money for fish, but you know what? I forgot. I needed also to ask for money for groceries. Oh, then it's okay. Is that begging? Is that begging really? I don't think so. I doubt it. She says it is still begging. Because the reason why I'm saying that there could be a difference is because the person may not be aware that the groceries are not available. And if it is brought to their notice, then I think it is right. Speak up. She says it's still begging. Carol feels that that is still begging.
Yeah, I feel that that is still begging. Yes, I think maybe we are out of time, but we probably need a whole other lesson for this topic.
Yes, but just...
Yeah,
just
because
say-
I am thinking of a situation where a wife is a homemaker, as in she doesn't go out of the home.
Yes.
And it is the husband to give the money. So, will she be asking all the time or begging all the time? I think a husband should not put his wife in a situation where she needs to ask all the time. That is my view.
Mhm, mhm. Any other view? Mhm. Yes.
It comes at the beginning. God is wiser than all of us. When God says the two become one flesh, you must understand that's the principle. It can't get better. It is one in everything. You don't isolate that woman from your life. When it comes to money, now you're different. When it comes to hugging, you're very happy. Oh, you, my wife. But when it comes to money, now you're changed. It doesn't work like that. I think Olivia doesn't have to ask for money from me. We need to, she should have access to the money. I must ensure that she has access to the money. I don't think she has ever, in my life, begged for money. She must not have begged for money. I mean, I love her in the first place. And if love means love in the biblical sense, then surely I don't put her in that situation of all the time. I'm in the meeting with Elder Ken, and there's this phone call that is just coming, and I have to look. Excuse me, my wife is talking. And she has to literally keep on, pelting me for money. You left without food. Safadhali tuma na M-Pesa. Alafu tuma na kutoa.
Now it is not called tuma ya kutoa. You know now what it is called? Huh? Do you know now what it is called? Weta. Unasema tuma na weta. Unanunua mudavadi unapata weta. So it is allowed, isn't it? Thank you so much for that light touch with which we finished. Time is definitely not on our side, but I think we've learned something, isn't it? We've learned something, haven't we? That we must be able to remember the oneness that we talked about as we were talking about adultery, commandment, the oneness, and be able to remember that we are one. And we'll be able to share like we are one. Obviously, the practical nature of things is that times you may have to ask, that's my view, but I think we should make facilities available for all of us. The wife should not feel like she is a stranger in the house, like she has to beg and plead and ask every day. Obviously, asking now all the time would probably be a problem. But I don't think it will stop you from talking about it, okay? And I think the man also should be able to, once in a while, be able to ask. And where you ask, you should not be told that you, right? And then we love one another. and we consider that we are one another's property, as we were taught. The body no longer belongs to her, and my body no longer belongs to me. What I have no longer belongs only to me, but also to her. We share every resource that we have. Brethren, time is not on our side. This is a beautiful subject. Can we come back next week so that we do the second and last part of stealing, the sin of stealing? And we will go to the last type of stealing, which is stealing from God. Then we will look at some examples of thieves in the Bible, and then we will look at biblical ways of countering the sin of stealing. So that is what to expect next week. Stealing from God, which is what I stopped at. Then we will look at some examples of thieves in the Bible, both the Old and the New Testament, just a few examples. And then we will now look at what is more important, isn't it? Some biblical ways of how we ourselves can deal with this sin of stealing.